The first Dawn of War game came out in 2004, just before I turned 9. Like any young, rational boy, a world where in the grim darkness of the future there is only war, I found the game and universe very appealing. Since this first foray into Warhammer, I've always been interested in 40k. This expanded into a near full take-up of the hobby in my life. I own many models. I like Space Wolves because futuristic Vikings riding wolves fighting orcs and demons is pretty cool. Much grey plastic in a pile of shame, and I've owned many of the video games, including all of the original Dawn of War, the expansions, Dawn of War 2, and some of the books. Now, I always preferred Dawn of War 1 over Dawn of War 2. It's not that I didn't enjoy playing Dawn of War 2 or acknowledge that it was a nice execution of a different style of game, small, squad, strategic, tactical role-playing combat over the big army base building of the first game. I just preferred the first one on personal preference. Even to this day, I will boot up Dawn of War 1, well, the Ultimate Apocalypse mod, and enjoy the coming to life of all-out war between my favourite races of the 40k universe. If I had things my way, I would have liked every subsequent Dawn of War game to just expand on the formula of the first game. Dawn of War 3 came out in 2017. Like any Dawn of War Warhammer fan, I was pretty hyped, made even more so by the awesome quality of the cinematic trailers and the cutscenes that always accompanied the Dawn of War games. However, when it came out, I was a poor student who lacked suitable hardware to even run the game, so I stayed happy playing some classic Dawn of War on my laptop. However, this soon came to feel like a turn of fortune in my favour, as the game tanked just spectacularly. Lambasted as a confused mess of fusion of the RTS and MOBA genres, which failed to attract fans of either, and completely alienated fans of the first two games. The game currently sits at a 48% positive reviews on Steam. From a cursory reading of the reviews, it seems to be that the positive reviews come from people who hadn't played the previous titles, really liked the graphics, or were just 40k nuts who'd love anything with the name on the box. However, the majority were still negative reviews that were just slating the game for being confused, boring, and unfinished. One thing that all the positive reviews did seem to have in common though, is that they said buy it on sale, meaning that even those who did like the game wouldn't pay the full price of 30 quid that the game is still listed as on Steam. And that's exactly what I did. 4 months ago, Dawn of War 3 was on a massive sale and I paid £2.99 for it. For 3 quid, I let my curiosity get the better of me. I grabbed the game with the intention of finally coming to it to see what all the fuss surrounding the game was about. Did it really deserve all the hate it got? Did the game have any redeeming qualities? And was there anything ever worthwhile here? I decided to finally undertake this endeavour. Maybe I just don't value my time as much as a normal person should. But I have spent 17 hours with Dawn of War 3. Okay, maybe I really don't value my time. But it is more than enough time to give it a fair shakedown. As always when you start up a Dawn of War game, in Dawn of War 3 you are treated to a pretty spectacular cinematic opening. The quality of these is always amazing. I, like many people, see this and wish for a full, feature-length film of the 40k universe in this sort of quality. Anyway, this one is not different. In my opinion, it does a very good job of setting the scene for a 40k game, very grim dark, very violent. An introduction to the main races of the game, Space Marines, Eldar and Orcs, and yes, I will have a moan about there are only 3 races in the game later, all narrated by an ominous sounding woman speaking of rage, death and battle and many, many bodies. This gave me a pretty good first impression. I know it's not game footage, but these fancy cinematics always get you excited. However, I probably always did keep the bias in the back of my mind of thinking there had to be something wrong with the game after I got past the nice opening. I got my first taste of this when I hit the main menu, with a notification telling me that the skull system had been removed. So I had to look up what the skull system was, and the answer appears to be that the skulls were initially designed to be used as an in-game currency to unlock elites and army doctrines, which are buffs, but I can only imagine this brought the potential for the heinous crime of microtransactions to accompany the online multiplayer. But after a fan backlash, the system was quickly removed from the game, which was nice for me because it meant I didn't have to deal with grinding to unlock any of the stuff. Even though they had removed the system by the time I got the game, it did leave a negative impression on me that the game was initially designed to have them. So far we have a merely cosmetic positive in the opening cutscene, and a negative because of an annoying system, but it had been removed, so balances out so far. I'm going to talk about the game in the order in which I played it, and speak about aspects of it as they crop up. I gave the tutorial a little go just to see what it was like, and then I played the campaign and finally the skirmish / multiplayer, which I couldn't actually play because it was dead. So the tutorial was your standard boring affair. This is how you move units, this is how you build stuff. That there are health pickups for some reason, just boring and completely skippable, so I skipped the second one. The main thing I remember from the tutorial was, it was the first time I noticed how weirdly some of the units move. It can be quite subtle, but I did notice it throughout the game, with units from different races. But look at how Gabriel Angelos moves here. Why is he doing that little skip? Looks like a child skipping to school, or as if he's trying to click his heels together because he's happy about to purge some orcs. But once you get past all that, you can get straight into the campaign. The first mission of the campaign gives you a taste of the game and basically acts as another tutorial, holding your hand through everything you do and telling you all the buttons, making the actual tutorial even more redundant. It also gives you a taste of how it's tried to combine the aspects of the first two games. You have units, a la the first game, your grunts, your units of space marines and assault marines, but you also have your elites, kind of OP single or small units with special abilities and big old health bars, more a la the second game. You play as the Blood Ravens, and your protagonist is the chapter master Gabriel Angelos. You run around the city as your force grows, you bash a large number of orcs with Gabriel's hammer, and you help out the Imperial Knight House of Varlock. It's a pretty bog standard opening mission, however I do have to say I quite enjoyed the whole affair. The biggest thing for me was the graphical quality, which I read about in some of the reviews. The game looks great. The graphics are really high standard, the environments look gorgeous, and I love the background details on this level. The Imperial Knight spraying bullets at orcs in the background was a really nice touch, and it makes you feel excited for the future prospect of controlling these beasts on the battlefield. You fend off the orcs, kill a war boss and move on. I do have to say that the unit models look very nice on the battlefield, and I like the amount of gore involved. I feel like this is as good a point as any to mention that some of the unit models in the game are really nice. Like, I spent a long time just sitting around in the army painter or the elite selector just looking at some of the models. I have to say that the design team for these did a great job. Anyway, the second mission introduces you to the orc protagonist, Gorguts, and I suddenly realised that I'll be playing as each of the three races concurrently in the same story, and this made me feel a bit odd. I mean, it's kind of janky to play as the Space Marines fighting the orcs, helping House Varlock, and then there's the orcs fighting House Varlock. It's almost like you're working against yourself. Though it does give you your first real mission where you work from a base, and the models again for the base buildings are really nice. They have some cool animations and perfectly suit each race. In the mission, your task is to gather some bits for a big gun, build it and bring it home, fighting some humans and then Eldar along the way. Orcs also have a cute little mechanic where they can gather scraps from the battlefield to get a unit buff, and the Gretchen can turn the bigger piles of these into vehicle units. You learn of Gorguts' power struggle against his current war boss, which confused me because Gorguts is massive in comparison, and I thought orcs worked in terms of power and size, so he should already be the boss. In Dawn of War 3, the missions are all connected by these little scenes of dialogue and the occasional cutscene to explain what the hell is actually going on. The end of the second mission introduced me to some of the really ropey voice acting in the game. I think we all remember the glorious nature of the voice acting in Dawn of War 1, but this...
With this gun? Well, you give him a good duffing for me, Gitstopper. I will. Take care, Gorguts.
I mean, orcs having a polite conversation just doesn't sit right with me. How did Games Workshop sign off on this? I came across a glitch about now, or some aspect of how the game is broken. After booting up the game to carry on with the campaign, I was greeted by a notification box telling me about some of the worthless skins or portraits I'd unlocked. The problem is, I couldn't get rid of the box. No amounts of clicking the OK button did it, and I had to close and reopen the entire game. This consistently happened throughout, far too much, and it really got on my tits. How was this never fixed? And it's such an annoying thing to happen, it really bothered me. And again left a bad taste in my mouth about how much care actually went into the small details of the game. I also had the problem that Nvidia Shadowplay would often refuse to recognize the game, meaning I missed bits to record and had to restart the game to kick it back into life a bunch. Anyway, Mission 3 sees you play as the Eldar for the first time. You have Farsia Maka taking command of some Eldar. You learn of her plan to work against some other Eldar. You kill a bunch of orcs, destroy some warp towers and fight a boss. Nothing special, but again the environment looks very nice. Mission 5, and yes, I do realise I've skipped one here or I mislabeled it, I don't know what's gone on. Anyway, Gorguts has now decided to become the war boss. He's subjugating some other war bosses to secure his power, and I'd been playing on normal difficulty up to this point and I'd been cruising through, so I bumped it up to hard for this one. This was a mistake. It didn't make it harder necessarily, but just far more grindy and boring. You have to wait around ages while your resources slowly tick up, which they do so slowly it's painful. There are enemy waves on this level, and at one point I cheesed the game by leaving an orc helicopter alive to shoot at my base while a Gretchen repaired it, just to give myself time to gather more resources to build up a decent force before the next wave arrived. If I'm honest, I turned the difficulty straight back down after this because I didn't want to be here forever. You get a couple more levels of filler, some random tasks, always switching races, which I didn't like. Just feels like you're undoing the progress of the previous level. I would have preferred 3 shorter campaigns which told the same story from the different perspective of each race. Though you do get some levels of different styles. You get a level on a more dynamic map where you just have elites, which makes it feel more like Dawn of War 2. Making the game, though, feel like it doesn't know what sort of game it wants to try and stay as. You also unlock some more elites which you can pick and choose before each mission, including some special units like Terminator, Orc Commando, Warp Spiders for the Eldar. Also the aforementioned army doctrines, which are your buffs, but they have effects which are so minor and insignificant that I didn't really see any point in using them in the campaign. Oh yeah, the grenade of one type of grunt unit will be slightly more effective, it's just not worth it. By this point you roughly know what's going on with all 3 of the protagonists and what they're fighting for. Basically, there's some bad juju going on. The planet Acheron suddenly appears out of nowhere. The Spear of Cain, an Eldar god, is said to be on the planet and no one wants anyone else to have it. Farsia Maka is trying to stop another Eldar from getting it, and there's some prophecy involved. There's a bit of manipulation of the orcs to disrupt the other one's plans. The Bloodraven Inquisitor wants the spear, and Angelos is against him having it. Let's face it, the details aren't really important. From here though, all of the missions are set on Acheron, which is a pretty boring location, and gets even more boring the more time you spend there. The missions continue to be long and grindy, just waiting around for resources to slowly tick up. You capture requisition points, like Dawn of War 1, but also build power generators on the same locations, and the power generates painfully slowly. There are pickups for each resource, but they are far and few between. At this point I'm under just halfway through the campaign, mission 8 or something, and I've got 10 hours down. This pacing feels all wrong, and far too much of that time is just waiting for resources to generate. I lost some patience and changed the difficulty down to the lowest, casual, and carried on. I feel this did improve things pacing wise, and the rest of the game only took 5 hours, which was much more bearable. You keep playing missions through Acheron as everyone bears down on the Spear of Cain. There's some treachery, some double crosses, and some more manipulation. But the next notable thing that actually happens is the introduction of each faction's Titan. You first get the Elder Warlock Titan, then the Imperial Knight, and then finally the Orc Gorkanaut, in 3 missions one after the other. These Titans are treated as elites in the same way of Angelos and Maka, so you can't construct them from a building or anything. Nonetheless, these missions were far more enjoyable for me. You get to build big armies, use cool Titans, kill lots of things. I don't know if lowering the difficulty made the resources generate quicker, but it was much more fun and felt a lot less grindy after this. However, the final few missions are where things really fell apart for me, with the big reveal that the spear is just bait for each of the armies and it's actually at the centre of a blood ritual to summon a bloodthirsty demon. The demon gets raised and your main enemy turns into armies of demons and copycat units from each race. And this is where it lost me. Farsia Maka convinces Angelos and Gorguts that they should all work together and kill the demon as a team. No. Sorry. Now, I really like 40k, but I don't claim to be an absolute expert on any of the lore, but I could never see an Eldar, an Orc, and a Space Marine working together as a team. As far as I'm aware, they only view the other as suitable for purging. The notion that they would all stand around having a chummy conversation about how to kill a demon is nonsensical. There should be an all-out showdown between huge armies of each race as they converge and kill the demon, but also kill the other races. That would probably be a better ending. If you had 3 different storylines, that could be the ending of each one, having to raise a huge army to fight the other 2 races and chaos. Instead, you get the most boring final mission imaginable. You have each of the main characters, no army, no base, you just run around in circle trying to kill an oversized demon. Just boring. Damage the demon, it flies away and heals. Next section, kill some minions, damage the demon, he leaves and heals. Finally, destroy the fountain it's using to heal, kill some more minions, dodge more attacks and kill the demon. The whole mission felt like a boring clickfest chore instead of an epic showdown that the game should have been building to. I don't have much footage of the last mission because Shadowplay was acting up and I am just not playing it again to get more. I refuse. This was a massive letdown of a final mission, making me feel really annoyed I'd bothered to play until the end. I had thought about giving up halfway through but persisted, and the only worthwhile thing was using the Titans. From the Steam achievements, you can deduce that only a tiny number of people who got the game actually played the campaign through to the end. If you complete a level on a higher difficulty, you get all the achievements for the lower difficulties, but as you can see, only 12 to 13% of people have even completed it on casual. That's a pretty dismal completion rate, and shows most people probably thought the same as me but weren't making a video on it so didn't subject themselves to it. Anyway, that's the campaign for Dawn of War 3. I've spent loads of time focusing on the campaign, and I'd justify that by saying it's the main part of the game anyone would ever buy it for now. After all, if you try and find an online lobby, this is what you'll be faced with. Yeah, completely dead, zilch. And this is prime time on a Saturday evening. So instead I played a good bit of skirmish mode, or custom solo as it's called in Dawn of War 3, which does sound a tad dirty. One of the things you'll notice is the sparse content. Only the same 3 races, and only 16 maps, and which you'll see upon a bit of inspection are mostly the same maps repurposed for different numbers of teams. Oh, and you can only have the same number of teams against each other, and it only goes up to 3 versus 3. Already, the original Dawn of War is doing better than it on all of these regards in terms of content, and that was released in 2004. If they wanted this to be a successful online multiplayer game, but they only gave people 3 races and very little choice between them, what were they expecting? Well, I mean, though it is pretty obvious that they were just hoping to create these other races and sell them as DLC content in the future. Anyway, the whole skirmish multiplayer thing is where you can see all the accusations that the game was trying to go after the MOBA audience. All the maps are just focused on lane fighting and holding points of control to try and outproduce the opponent and be able to churn out more units than them. I remember back in Dawn of War 1, I might try and employ a sneaky tactic with the Eldar, such as use the cloaked buildings to try and build a webway portal behind the enemy base by teleporting a builder unit there, and then striking the enemy base from behind. Just none of that here, no clever tactics, just produce units and throw them forward. I have played some Dota 2 in my time, but MOBA games really aren't for me, and they clearly didn't appeal to enough of the Dawn of War audience either. It seems to me just a rush forward for the points of control, and then whoever gets to them first gets the most resources and wins the game in the end. I can see they wanted teamwork to be a huge part of the game. Control points captured by your ally count for you too, and your ally can build listening posts on the points you capture. Even if you're a Space Marine, an Orc could just come along and build a listening post on a point you've captured. For me, there's just not enough here. The number of buildings you can build is very small, and I couldn't really see why you would need more than one of any type, as even in skirmish mode you can't get enough resources to justify 2 production queues. As far as I could see, there were only 3 game modes, one about power cores, another annihilation, and then annihilation with defense, which added a couple of turrets. Yeah, good job. There are these phases called escalation phases as well, which progress as the game goes along, and the higher the escalation phase, the more resources are produced, the more refunds you get for units that die. But this just confused me as well, because surely this just exponentially increases the number of resources the team that holds the most points can gather. Before skirmish and multiplayer games as well, you have to choose your elites and army doctrines, which I imagine Relic thought, oh yeah, this will be a good thing for micro strategy and people coming up with the best roster to win the games. Instead, it just kind of limits the number of the coolest units in 40k that you can field. For example, if you want to field some Terminators, you have to make sure you choose them as an elite choice and then spend your valuable elite points to spawn them. And even then, you can only have 3 Terminators. Oh yeah. Elite points are a resource you very slowly generate to spawn your elite units. You'll need around 9 or 10 for a Titan, and about 5 or 6 for some Terminators. From the off in the game, you just build up to 10 and wait to get a Titan. If you were foolish enough to field some Terminators after gathering 6 points, your opponent could just hold you off, wait till they get 10 and throw a Titan at you, and you won't be able to counter because you'll have gone back to 0 points. Also, once you first spawned an elite like a Titan, if they die, it's only a cooldown until you can spawn them again. No more need to spend any more points. Oh, and I haven't mentioned the mess of the unit roster you're shown at the bottom of your screen. How you'd keep track of anything in that, I don't know. You can group units together, but that's a pretty annoying faff, and they'll probably die so quickly that there wouldn't have been a point to it anyway. To be honest, with this amount of content, I could see the game becoming very boring quickly and completely lacking in replayability. For me, the only glaring redeeming quality of this game is the quality of the graphics. Oh, and some of the sounds are nice, like some of the weapons sound nice and weighty. The soundtrack is mostly mixed so quietly it didn't really stand out for me, so I can't comment on it. After playing the game, I searched around for things online about it, and I was kind of blown away by how positive some of the reviews from some of the gaming outlets were. 8 out of 10 from Polygon and GameSpot, 77% on Metacritic. These just seem bizarrely high considering the actual fan reception to the game. I'd also like to address this point, apparently from IGN. Relic deserves credit for not simply remaking the same game with prettier graphics. I don't think that in and of itself is necessarily a positive point. In fact, it's one of the biggest negatives I, and clearly a lot of other people, had with the game. But anyway, you take a game like Age of Empires from 1 to 2, it was just the same game with better graphics, and is considered one of the best RTS games of all time, and is still played 22 years later. Or the Total War franchise, every release until after Shogun was essentially the same formula with a new location and better graphics. It's only since the new games like Three Kingdoms and Troy that I stopped playing that because I don't like single hero units in what was my historical battle simulator, and from what I've seen, this change has split the player base. My point is that you don't need to reinvent the wheel with every new release. Why not just try and appeal to and build on your core audience before abandoning them to just jump on the bandwagon of whatever genre you think is popular right now? Overall, I can see why this game was abandoned. Firstly by the player base, and then soon after by the developers. And I can understand why, if a game is so unsuccessful that it's not worth trying to carry on and spend so much of your resources to get it to a point where people would come back to it. It's a shame, really. I can see how this couldn't really be a No Man's Sky situation, where a game that is lambasted upon release could be raised from its grave into something people actually enjoyed playing and forgave the developers for the original problems. But Dawn of War is a franchise that had a sad fall from grace, from the absolute pinnacle of the RTS genre to a sad forgotten game, which most people's most recent experience with left them with a bad taste in their mouths. If I had things my way, like I've said before, Relic should have just hired everyone who made the Ultimate Apocalypse mod and made that, but with these graphics and without all the bugs. Perhaps fans of Dawn of War 2 had their own idea of the game they would have preferred as well. But the problem is here, there is nothing for either of these groups. If you really do fancy trying this game out, do what I did and wait for a huge sale. I paid £2.99 for it, and I'd say that's as high as anyone should go. I will come back to Relic games, I am looking forward to Age of Empires 4, which they are developing now. It'll be their first game developed since Dawn of War 3, and dear God, I hope they don't try and do anything too clever with it, and we end up with another Dawn of War 3 on our hands. But Dawn of War 3, in my opinion, does deserve the criticism. Sadly, there isn't anything here but nice graphics and a hollow, unfinished game. Hopefully what the game can be for Relic and for other game developers is a lesson that if you try and please everyone, you'll end up pleasing no one. Big thanks to everyone out there who watched this to the end. Do let me know your thoughts on the Dawn of War franchise in the comments below. What would you have preferred Dawn of War 3 to be? Did you prefer 1 over 2 and all that? Make sure you like and subscribe. Share the video if you thought it was worthwhile, and do keep an eye out in the future for new videos coming. Thanks and take care.